apologize for the delay. It's 7:21 p.m. This is the meeting of the Berkeley Police Review Commission. Today's date is April 10th, 2019. Present today are, Kathy, would you like a roll call, please?
Allenby,
Present.
Calavita,
Here.
Matthews,
Here.
Mickelton,
Here.
Perez Velez will not be here. Commissioner Pritchett will be here, she said at 8:30. Ramsey.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts will not be here. Commissioner Yampolsky will not be here.
Also present is Kathy Lee, the PRC officer. Approval of the agenda. Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Public comment?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could you announce the police staff who are here
Oh,
today?
I am so sorry, I overlooked that. Present today with us is Chief Andy Greenwood, Lieutenant Dave Lindenau, and Sergeant Cesar Malero. Thank you for coming out tonight. Also present is our own city manager, Dee Ridley, and we're happy to have you out, Dee. Public comments, do we have any? Okay, 3 minutes, please.
Yes, what I would really like the commission to do is to write a letter to City Council and ask about details, and I'd like also to address the police department and look into details around the January 21st hit and run, which the police department investigated for 9 weeks and sent off to the district attorney, and the district attorney came back with not enough evidence. Well, that seems very strange because there was video evidence that was online of the hit and run, so it was clear that it was video evidence of the guy driving the wrong way down the Durant, along the sidewalk, running over the guy and heading on down. And from what I understand, the police had other video evidence that captured the license plate, and they tracked down the driver. And yet, 9 weeks, and there were people like Maxina Ventura who were not properly interviewed, who wrote a op-ed in the Daily Planet about this that described what she saw. She was there. And so 9 weeks it goes, and the district attorney comes back and says, not enough evidence. I mean, how can there be a video of this and then not to have enough evidence? So the question is, did the police send all the evidence? Was the evidence of that video sent? What other evidence, what was the lack of evidence about that came out of the district attorney? So if you can read this in the Berkeley side, the original Berkeley side article, which happened a couple days afterwards, described sort of the generalities of the event, and they put in there an addendum about a week ago that said that the district attorney declined to prosecute due to lack of evidence. And that just seems very, very strange. It really looks like whoever this young man was is either tied into some people in power that they want to protect, or the police just want to discount the man who was run over because he's black and homeless. Either way, that seems very, very odious, and I think it warrants you guys looking into it further. And especially since you have the police chief and the city manager, you could ask them here directly today. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay.
Please.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Christine Schwartz, and I'm a very active community member. And today, I wanted to thank Berkeley PD for their gallant efforts in dealing with our communities every single day. I went on a police ride-along, and even after my police ride-along, I witnessed an incident that shook me. And I realized Berkeley, the city I love, the city I live in, the city I work in, the city that I know a lot of people in, has a humongous drug problem. Not only that, a humongous homeless problem, affordable housing problem, mental illness problem that we are not addressing. And I am angry. You don't usually find me angry. I'm usually smiling, a happy-go-lucky person. I am angry at this problem. I want us to do something about it. When you see a drug dealer on the street and he's allowed to do what he does, and I've seen what meth, we have a big problem with meth. A person in the hospital screaming off of the hook uncontrollably, has to be put in whatever those braces are in the hospital, taking up our services, taking advantage of our most vulnerable people in our community. I would think everybody would be upset just like me. But it happens every day. And who knows about it? The police. They are there dealing with our calls every day for our convenience. I want the city of Berkeley to pay attention to this problem, not forget. I want it to be a clean city where we can have our families, raise them without shootings, crime, less homeless, less mentally ill that can't get the help they need. That's cruel. It's inhumane. Please do something.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Approval of minutes of the March 27th, 2019.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Chair's report. The chair is out this evening, and I'm sitting in being the vice chair, and I don't have a report, but I'm happy to be here and seeing all of you, and I apologize again for the delay in beginning the meeting. PRC officers report.
Thank you. We have no new complaints filed since our last meeting. We have a Board of Inquiry coming up on April 12th. I passed out a flyer for the Naples Regional Conference on May 3rd. And I do still want to encourage people. I actually gave commissioners a couple extra, and there's some on the table if you want more to distribute to people who might be interested in attending. We've already gotten, I think, about 65 registered, so the planning committee is very excited about that. And I think that the panels are very relevant. We've got some great panelists, including Chief Greenwood, who's going to talk about sit on the panel for SB 1421. So please help spread the word and register. I know that there are several of you that have already registered, so thank you very much. And the last thing I had to report was Lexipol policy 318 on victim and witness assistance that the PRC had recommended amendments to protect the safety of sex workers has been issued by the police department with the PRC's recommended changes. So, thank you, Chief. And I'll have that in your next packet. So that's it for me.
Okay. Subcommittee reports. Do you have anything to say?
I can stand in for Lexipol.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
The chief's report.
This is the chief and report. It's not on the agenda, but.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Chief, did you like to speak here?
Sure. We've got subcommittee reports. did receive the suggested amendments from the PRC subcommittee. That process last week, and we incorporated the general order, which was issued, I think, on Thursday or Friday. So I appreciate how that entire thing rolled out, and look forward to continued work with subcommittees and with the commission. In terms of staffing, we're at 163 today. We have 4 laterals in background. So we're hoping that they prove out okay, and we're in the midst of the process for hiring new officers, and there is a physical agility test a week from Friday and Saturday, so in 10 days or so. So we're continuing process after process to work to find folks to bring on board. To that end, I actually passed out earlier this blue card. So this just came out as a result of some of the work of our recruitment team. The idea is to create a card that our folks and whomever else can sort of carry with them in their pocket when they've contacted somebody who might be a good prospect, be able to provide them the information, comprehensive information right there on the spot. So not a huge deal, but a nicely designed piece and something we can sort of all start using. So I want to provide you with one of those so you can see that, and if you know someone who would be appropriate, I was speaking with some of the community members here, but often we hear, or I hear, are you hiring? Can you hire Berkeley natives, people from Berkeley? There's just such a desire to have that, and I desire that as well, not as a be-all and end-all, but I want diversity, including people who are from here and maybe people who aren't from here. But really, I think that can happen through networking and through people who know people. Like if you know someone in your social circles who may be interested in providing this kind of information, maybe we'll help them along and give them a place to go. So we'll keep up with that. I wanted to check in on a couple other kind of policy developments. So we're working on a timetable for the use of force policy revision process. I hope to give that to you at the next meeting or so. But just know that that includes once we have a working group on it, and once they have devised the policy revisions according to Councilmember Harrison's referral, and have that settled, and then looked at the Lexipol policy as well to see if there's anything you want to draw from that. But once they have a kind of a final draft, then we will come to you so that you can take a look at it as well before we finalize it, so there's an opportunity for input on the use of force policy. So I just want to formally call that out. Additionally, I'm in the last steps of finalizing immigration policy, and we'll be sharing that with the Commission prior to finalizing that as well. So there'll be an opportunity for you to see that as well. Let's see. In terms of work, we're preparing our budget for the biannual budget process and incorporating some of what we'll be doing the next 2 years into the strategic plan, the city's strategic plans and objectives. So we'll be sharing that with you when that's ready to go as well. Some of those, there's an overlap. For example, the use of force policy work, the data collection and analysis work that we talked about before, as well as some other pieces. So we'll be sharing that out. Today I heard from Berkeley High School staff. We have the law and social justice class, and they have the problem now that 150 kids have signed up for the 60 available slots. And we had a brief little email discussion because they're not able to expand the program, to make it 150% bigger. They don't have staff for that. Probably we would have a hard time supporting that because that's a lot of kids to go through the program. But it does speak to the popularity of the program. And I think it's pretty remarkable that at our high school, we're getting that many kids who are showing an interest. They are continuing to work on staffing out a year or two of the law and social justice program, and I'm optimistic that's going to happen next year. So, and then just a anecdote, side note, I was eating at Saul's last week, and a waitress who had introduced herself to me about a year earlier, she was a Berkeley High student, she recognized me and about a year ago said how great that class was. She was just very effusive about what she got out of class. She went off to college on the East Coast, which didn't really work out the way she had thought, and came back and is now attending college here, but is really interested in being hired by the police department. So I'm hoping we can get her into our age program because she's 19 and we need to be 21. But so, you know, I look at her and I think that could be the first kid that comes through. So, it's really encouraging to see that. I did also want to share just anecdotally how great I am feeling the effects of the body-worn camera. I have gone through, I think, three internal affairs complaints and 2 use of force just reports where I've been able to just get on the system, watch the incident from various points of view, and make decisions based on that and how helpful it is to see what happened down in the real nuanced dynamics. So I just want to express what a difference that's made for me. I think I've been confident in reviewing materials, for example, in the use of force. I read the reports, I look at photographs, but having the body-worn camera footage makes a huge, sort of huge difference. So I am looking forward to you also in these boards of inquiry being able to get the same value out of it that I've been getting out of it just in my position as chief. Finally, although it's next October, the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference is coming in next October, and I intend to put out an invitation to the PRC to have a member that we would pay for. Last year, Commissioner Ramsey went. I think we were at CPE with Sahana, and George Perez-Velez the same, and George Littman went with us previous year as well. So just something to think about. I don't need the information right away, but I will be extending that invitation that the department has someone come to IC with us. And that's it for my report.
At 163, are you still in the situation of using mandatory overtime to cover the beats?
No in the present, and we hope not as summer approaches. Because summer that's the vacation time, so we have fewer available people. But we think we're going to be able to get by without. We should not have to do the same sort of program we did last summer, where they plotted out all the shift openings and everybody took, I want to say 2 or 3 shifts each mandatory to fill those plots. So we're not in that territory. I think because we have fewer people injured, not we have fewer people injured, and more people saw them.
Second question, sorry. And what level do you need to get to before you reach being able to restore some of the specialized units like the bike patrol?
So the way we envision it, we want about 76 people who are working folks on patrol, and then as we go over, say 4 or 5 kind of surplus over that we shave off a chunk at a time. And so there will be 4 that go to probably something, a reconstituted Special Investigations Bureau, which is part of our investigations units, and we're still really feeling the impacts of fewer investigators. Similarly, a group of 4 would go to bikes to restart the bike program. A group of 4 would go to motors to increase motors, and then we have incremental adds there. We're not there yet, but that's the plan. And we'll, as we approach it, and we really have the ability to move people off of patrol, move that surplus off, to scoop them a piece at a time, then that's how we'll incrementally rebuild the units.
Chief, are we on target for receiving the response to the CPE report in April?
Yes, so that report is, I'm putting some final kind of revised touches on it. It'll go into council agenda packet. I think late next week it'll be on council's action calendar on April 30th. So it'll be out in the public view, I think a couple weeks before that.
Any other questions? Oh, Chief, I just wanted to say that today I was at Malcolm X School, and they were in the process of having an active shooter drill.
Oh.
And I'm surprised I didn't know about this. I picked up my granddaughter there. But I thought it was really interesting to see, and I was just wondering if other elementary schools are going to be having the same experience
I think the school district has a pretty comprehensive plan to roll out training. I think they're, on this state, I believe that they're using a vendor who teaches an approach, but that they have also had our experts in to contribute to the program.
Okay.
So we continue to do that training, and today, I think I'm actually up at step 1, today or yesterday when there was active shooter survival training as well.
Yeah, I thought it was wonderful.
How old is your, can I ask, I'm curious how old your granddaughter
My
is?
granddaughter is 6.
And what were her impressions of it?
Well, they were out on the playground, so the older kids were in the, yeah, but the little kids were out on the playground, and I just happened to stumble on it.
Okay.
So it was an experience. Yes.
I just had one comment, not necessarily a question. You mentioned that the Lexipol 318 had been issued, so I just wanted to publicly thank Lieutenant Montgomery, who was really invaluable during that process, his input, and I think really helped with his expertise as well as the expertise from people outside the district, which I just think made the whole process go much more efficiently and seemed to come to a result that was acceptable from the police department. So appreciate that.
Thank you for that.
And Gwen, I can add, as a parent of a high schooler, that the Berkeley student activists 2 weeks ago sent a busload up to Sacramento to lobby for a common sense gun reform. So for some of the kids, that's their response to the injustice really of having to train for such events. So they met with Skinner and Wicks and Scott Wiener, and they felt positive about the day.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, the MOU subcommittee,
We're waiting for responses, I think.
right now, we're waiting
Yeah,
for
and
responses.
Chief, so rather than have you respond here in this sometimes chaotic forum, we decided to wait and get the responses for our few little questions and then meet again as a subcommittee so that by the time we come back here, we have a tighter perspective and recommendation for the board. We just thought that was cleaner, so that's why we're waiting.
That's fine, and we haven't yet scheduled the actual council item for Monday to come in, so it's the earliest it's gonna be, I think it'd be May 14th, but we have not got it yet. So I'll provide you folks with a response to those collective questions there.
Okay, old business?
Sorry, what about the Lexipol policy?
Okay.
I know about that subcommittee.
I'm on the subcommittee, so subcommittee, the other 2 members are not here, Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Perez-Velez. Commissioner Roberts was just added at the last meeting, so we met on March 27th and we're scheduled to meet today, but unfortunately our chair could not make it today. So we're still going through the same process of 10 at a time. At the last meeting, we approved 2 of the 10 in the batch, which will be forwarded, I think, at the next meeting of the full commission. We now have a little bit of a backlog because we didn't get to that 10, and we have a new 10, which is you check the new agenda for today. You'll see the ones. There are a couple that have also, or I should say a few that have also been sent back to the subcommittee by the PRC that are going to be of interest to people. I think the hate crimes, the vehicle pursuit, obtaining air support, and First Amendment assemblies, chief among them. But we're going to reset a date now that we had to postpone today as we get back at it. We've been meeting pretty much every 2 weeks to knock out 10 at a time.
Did you have the First Amendment? Is that P26?
It is
429?
429 and C64.
C64.
Yep.
Okay.
Old business. Whether the clear and convincing standard is the appropriate standard to be used in PRC boards of inquiry. PRC officer, can you update us on if the
Yes.
meeting confirmed is occurring?
I think at the last meeting, actually at your March 13th meeting, there was some confusion about whether meet and confer was going on, and different people had heard different things. So I actually have from two sources that the union is still continuing to meet and confer with the city on the charter reform proposal. It is active and ongoing, is my understanding. And I think the reason that you wanted to know that was because Commissioner Ramsey, I believe, had some interest in pushing this idea of the clear and convincing standard. But that actually is something that is in the proposal and is being met and conferred on right now. So with that in mind, I don't know how you think you want to proceed.
Can we recognize? Yes. I think my concern is two. One, I understand that there's the charter amendment proposal, which is essentially the proposal of what will be placed on the ballot, perhaps in the next election. So that seems to me to be one, I'll call it lane, one column. But my question was, looking at the city attorney's memo on the charter amendment proposals and what was required to enact certain changes, that memo indicated that the PRC itself could change the clear and convincing standard without a charter amendment. So they could do that just by voting to change its own rules. Now, as part of that process, if we were to do that, that would require a meet and confer change. So it's still not a meet and confer change. That still would require a meet and confer. So but I think what I'm hearing is, well, let me also add to that. From Commissioner Perez-Velez, I thought what he had indicated was that more than a year ago, before I joined the commission, that the commission, on the motion of then Commissioner Bernstein, had actually voted to make that change. And so he was indicating that there was a meet and confer going on that change proposed by the commission, separate and apart from that change being included as part of the charter amendment. And so my question is there a meet and confer going on with respect to not the charter amendment, but with respect to the commission's earlier vote to change that standard of proof? And if there is, then sure, I would like to see that process come to a conclusion. But if there's not, then I would like to move to create a subcommittee to decide whether we, in fact, as a commission, would like to vote to change those rules. Separate from the charter, because there may be overlap, but they're not mutually exclusive, right? The charter amendment can be continuing, and we can say we want to do, whatever we're entitled to do within our own authority. And that's what I'm interested in exploring.
So on page 37 of the handout from the March 13th meeting, I don't know if you have that with you.
Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me.
But on page 37, it says the PRC has utilized the clear and convincing evidence standard in its BOI hearings for more than 30 years. The PRC in 2014 proposed changing this standard of proof as part of a package. After engaging in meet and confer as required by the Brown Act, this proposed amendment was not implemented, suggesting to me that the meet and confer process ended in an impasse.
Right, and so that, right, so that was what I thought we were trying to figure out. And it sounds like there is a meet and confer going on, but it is not with respect to this. It's with respect to the charter amendment proposal that the city council forwarded, the mayor's proposal that was adopted by the council.
Of which this is part.
Well, it's not part, it's just a separate attempt to address the same issue.
Right, but there's the recommendation to change this standard.
Yes,
in that
as
package.
part of that.
Yes.
But what I feel is that, look, if we as a commission feel that we should change the
Yes.
standard, we should not be waiting for the charter
Right.
amendment to go through. The charter amendment may go through, it may not go through.
Yeah.
It may get put on the ballot and it may get voted down. But that doesn't change our ability to change this particular rule. And we should be considering that, I believe, separate and apart.
Right.
On its merits, just that one particular portion of it. And so, in order to do that, if that has sat vacant since 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and there was an impasse, and so it wasn't implemented, we're 5 years later,
Mm-hmm.
I do think I think it would be appropriate to create another subcommittee and start to move down that road, considering whether we believe it's appropriate to go to the well again, so to speak.
I totally agree. Why do we need a subcommittee? Why can't we just vote on it?
I think a subcommittee would be helpful because we could then hear potentially some testimony from some witnesses and experts who could give us some information on a legitimacy. And I believe Commissioner Bernstein's memo was excellent.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot
I
of
still
literature.
think there's time to update that, and I think it's helpful to me
Yeah.
to at least have that testimony and allow people to speak on the issue.
Right.
So that's what I would be inclined to do if in fact there is no meet and confer going on right now with respect to a proposal or a motion that the PRC has passed to change its own internal rules and regulations.
So I totally agree, and I'd like to do that, and I'd be part of that subcommittee. And I'm wondering if there's a way in which, if this subcommittee and the commission agrees to change our rules, that can be set on a faster track than that whole amendment package, which is a huge undertaking.
It seems like it should be able to have its own separate meet and confer, but that's something that we could do in a subcommittee too. We could be getting advice from the city attorney's office about what the legal requirements are to go through a meet and confer, what your options are after an impasse, and at least try to understand
Right.
what our legal authority is and what legal process is to make that sort of change, so that we do it, hopefully make the best proposal for accomplishing that.
Right. I mean, the problem is that standard is so out of sync with all other such hearings that it just makes no sense to require clear meetings.
But I would love for, a subcommittee can at least investigate it, hear some testimony and put out a report.
Yeah.
I will participate in it.
Okay, well,
So I can.
you would put a motion.
Okay, well, I will move to create a subcommittee to consider the appropriateness of the clear and convincing standard of proof and whether it should be changed to preponderance of evidence.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Now,
Usually the chair would make appointments to the subcommittee. We've had 2 volunteers, and other people want to volunteer.
okay, so the chair appoints Ramsey and, Calavito and Mitchell.
It's so hard to say. It's almost my kitten, but not quite.
Okay. So we have 3 that have agreed.
Wow. That's unprecedented that people volunteer.
Yes, that's wonderful. Okay, we're going to, move past, 9A into, 9B. And I would like to, have a motion for approving a presentation of certificate of appreciation to Harry Yampolsky and empower the chair to work with the PRC officer on wording.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Oh, we don't need to have
Okay, and, item C.
This was.
Oh, I will report on this. I mean, I know that Commissioner
Okay.
Perez has put this on. just for discussion purposes, over the course of the Lexipol subcommittee's work, well, let me back. Initially, we have been trying to compare the new Lexipol issue, or I'd say Lexipol compatible or formatted policies to the general orders to make sure there's been no sort of substantive changes to what was put forward in the general orders before. We sort of call this making sure that they're appropriate Berkeley-ized. But beyond that, beyond comparing differences between the general order and the the corresponding Lexipol policy, we've not really gotten into the substance of any particular policy. As we've talked about the difference between the word should and shall, right, and some of those changes that we've seen moving from the general orders to the Lexipol format, it has brought up the issue of substantive changes to the policy, because sometimes should and shall is actually a substantive change, and it's been justified by the officers who've been drafting these policies, often with good purpose, but we sort of feel as a subcommittee that was not our charge to evaluate substantive differences, or I shouldn't say substantive differences, didn't articulate it at all. Before, we did not articulate that well at all. What we have been doing, like I said, is just comparing the sort of new policy to the old. But now there are being changes that are being made, that are then now requiring us to say, hey, is this not just keeping the same format, but is this a policy change that makes sense substantively, and maybe causes us to go away from the previous general orders that may have said shall and now move to should. And so, rather than just taking up that issue in the subcommittee, we realized we need to come back to the commission to revisit exactly what our charge was as a subcommittee. So that's what Commissioner Perez-Velez is going to be addressing eventually, but I think it will move to old business and we'll talk about it next week. Sorry if that was not clear.
Process.
Yeah.
My question about, at last meeting, we went through some of them and made a few minor changes like you were talking about. Are we waiting for a complete package before we send those recommended changes forward, or are they going piecemeal?
They're going piecemeal. There are dozens of policy scores.
And when we finish with one, it goes forward?
Right, so we're doing 10 at a time. As a subcommittee, we forward them to the PRC, and when the PRC approves a recommendation, we forward them to the police.
Okay.
A lot of the policies have already been issued, so it's just forwarding our recommendations potentially for updated versions.
Okay. And was this the motion that established the existing subcommittee?
Yeah, which I will say, the wording is, on its face is pretty broad. But,
pretty wide open.
It has not been our practice in the subcommittee has been more narrow. And because if you all of a sudden take on evaluating the substance of every single policy, it sort of circumvents our whole subcommittee process. So that's why we came back to talk about it.
So maybe Kathy Lee, you can tell me, historically, when has the PRC participated in policy development? Is it only when new policy is originated, or do people sometimes take a look at an existing policy and form a subcommittee to look at it specifically?
Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why the subcommittee, if it saw a policy that they wanted to review, couldn't propose to do that. In other words, you could pursue this efficient pathway of translation to Lexipol, but tag anything that you thought required more discussion for a separate initiative.
Yeah, our concern would be that if we then tag it and it comes back to the Lexipol subcommittee to do that work, it would become unwieldy. And overwhelming. And our other concern is that if we are reviewing something from as the Lexipol subcommittee, we move it up to the commission, and that's gonna open the door for commissioners to tag things and say, this is such and such policy, we want that sent back to the Lexipol committee for an evaluation, which I'm not thinking makes sense. We think if there's a particular policy, for example, say, vehicle pursuits that someone on the commission or on the subcommittee think that really should be looked at, and that means that there should be a vehicle pursuits subcommittee created that can then just address that issue.
I agree, that's what I'm saying, is that
Okay.
historically that has been the pattern, and the fact that you have this charge to translate general orders to Lexipol is a specific task that doesn't preclude anybody from
No.
doing a policy review.
No, that's right, but the question is whether that policy review would be done by our subcommittee or not.
So just to be clear, we're not discussing this tonight, you're saying this will come.
This
back
is
up
just
to
for
business?
discussion purposes, we're not taking any action.
Yeah, we're not taking it, since he's not here. Okay.
I wanna clarify for Commissioner Ramsey, actually, I have not yet been sending these on. That wasn't my understanding, but I'm concerned.
Okay, then I made that
There
mistake.
haven't been that many, I think, that.
You're talking about the ones that have been approved by the commission?
The whole commission.
Oh,
I mean, there
okay.
haven't been that many with changes,
No, that's true, but, I
so,
mean,
but I will, okay, so I'll make sure.
well, let me, let me not get a turn, but I thought that was the process, but maybe I'm wrong.
That was my assumption, because
That's
you
what I
had
thought,
prepared
too.
that chart that showed
Right.
approved, and
Right, yeah.
the Lexipol
And that-
committee is finally gaining some momentum, so anything we can do to
Right.
support that would be
Sure.
great.
And what we've been trying to do is push things out so that it would make it easier for the police department to feel comfortable in issuing policies as soon as possible. Now, clearly they can't get them, we can't get them all out at once, but I'd say there's no reason to hold them back once they've been approved, and then, at least the chief can do with our recommendations what he will, but maybe make the changes right away.
Okay.
And at least express that certain policies have already been approved, have been reviewed and, were recommended for approval by the review,
Okay.
police review commission.
Thank you.
Alright, so
We are now at, item,
9A, which we can discuss.
we can discuss,
You could start a
we just,
discussion.
I guess we could start, I mean, she's not here.
No, I know, but it's not even from her, it's from the commission. I don't understand
Well,
that.
no,
That's
okay,
not,
let me-
it's,
so
this
let
is
me
confusing,
clarify.
Okay,
so what I understand is from her.
Yeah, so the commission had agreed that it would like to hear from the Berkeley Mental Health Division and a representative from the police
Right.
department
Right.
about the current protocols for responses to mental health emergencies.
Mhm.
Right.
Commissioner Pritchett would, after that, like to take it further, and that's reflected in, what was handed out tonight. So she, although this is not her item, I think she wanted to begin a discussion about where she wants to go.
But so the first thing for us to do is to hear the presentations, it seems to me.
That's what I would think,
I would propose we hear the presentations, bring our questions that we might have to the presenters, and hear their answers. And subsequently, if we're not satisfied with the answers, then we can pursue other lines. But it seems to me the first thing would be to have presentations from those who know how it works.
I agree with that,
And
and I
then we
think
can-
that's what we need to vote on now. We need to vote on who we're going to contact and have our PRC, staff person contact them, and maybe they can come and do a presentation, as well as contact the chief. and
Right.
See
So
who he
moved.
wants to designate as a person that can come and speak
Well,
with us.
I've already made the contact,
Okay.
because this is something that the commission had already said.
Okay.
We would
So
like
do we
to
have a
move
date?
forward.
Excellent.
They can come on April 24th.
Okay,
Do we need a motion, or did you?
So you don't need a
It's already
motion,
been
you
done.
don't need a motion for that, because
Okay.
you've already done that.
okay,
And I'm working out the details. what I've agendized is for you, so, mental health people said, could we get questions in advance? So that is what, this is being agendized for tonight. So what you have are, on page 11 of the packet, Commissioner Pritchett's, questions from a couple meetings ago, actually, from the February 13th meeting, and I think it's at that meeting where the commission said, yes, we would like to hear from mental health and BPD about mental health. And then starting on pages 13 and 14 are questions that were developed 5 years ago when a similar presentation was made. And if you've looked at this, you'll notice there's some overlap. And
Yes.
it looks as if, on tonight's handout, Commissioner Pritchett had some additional questions that she thinks are appropriate to April 10th meeting.
Can I ask who is Ann Rogers, she a commissioner?
But I was curious.
Pardon me?
On page 13, who is Ann Rogers?
Oh, she was a commissioner at the time, yes.
So what is I don't understand, we have 2 pages of questions from Commissioner Pritchett. One that was sent to us via,
One was sent today. This is the one that says draft only and it's loose.
yes, and the other was from February.
Right. I wasn't expecting her to add on to in this way.
Yeah, this is,
I have had discussions about the way I was thinking about it, which is exactly what you, Commissioner Calavita, had said, which is, let's get the presentation, and then,
Right.
once we know what the
what the
procedures are
process
now,
is, then we'll
then
ask questions.
move forward, exactly.
So I think that's the way we should go, and if the other commissioners agree to that, maybe we can vote on that tonight. And then come back with questions after they do their presentation. I don't see, doing the questions before you hear what they're gonna present you.
Well, the questions you would wanna ask are the questions that you wanna know from mental health
Right.
and the police department about their responses. And then the next part would be, this deeper dive.
Yeah.
So, so who's coming? Somebody from mental health?
Yes.
Okay.
And-
Mental health.
And the chief or
And
someone from the
I've
department?
asked Chief Greenwood to designate somebody, I don't know if he has yet. decided.
We're in process.
Okay, so he's working on it.
Couple people in mind. We
Okay.
just wanna make sure we have the right person.
Okay.
So these pages of questions seem to be targeted specifically to the police department, not to the mental health
Yeah,
professionals.
that's the way I'm taking it.
We don't have questions for the listed for the mental health.
Yeah, this is all police, so I think we need
Well, I
to
haven't,
first.
Ann Rogers.
I think former Commissioner Rogers' questions are directed towards both.
Okay,
Which,
this one.
Page 13.
oh yeah, hers is, but I'm looking at Commissioner Pritchett's.
Well,
This is all, looks like it's all.
it's a little too late if they're coming on the 24th, they're coming at the next meeting, so it's a little too late for us to sit here and devise a set of questions for them.
I'm sorry? No, we
You
haven't
said
sent.
April 24th.
Yes, the questions haven't been sent to them yet.
I know, what I'm saying is, it's a little late for us to sit here and set up a bunch of questions for them.
Well, presumably you had thought about these, they were in the packet for you to think about.
Yeah, but these, we didn't understand when we got these handouts that we're getting the presentation first,
Oh, okay.
and that we were devising questions for the presenters to
Okay.
answer. I looked at this and thought that this was a request for information from the department, but not about the presenters, so I don't know how to proceed.
I could,
I recognize,
I And my question is, how does it work? Somebody makes a call for service, they think someone is a danger to themselves or to others. What is the flow tree? Dispatch gets it, it can go here, it can go here. What are the choices and the potential outcomes, sort of as a tree? That's my basic general question. I'm not so interested in spending the chief's time on generating a report with statistics and things that aren't necessarily meaningful to us out of context. So to me, the context is what happens when that call gets made and how do we tree down to the potential outcomes.
And I would also like to hear from the experts, those people who are responding to the calls, what their biggest challenges are and what can we do to help mitigate them. Because I know that they're confronting challenges every day and being asked to do, you know, a lot more than they can really do. What are the biggest challenges? What are the gaps in service? What are the biggest issues that they would like to see addressed? Not that we can address them, but you know, we need to know what the challenges are. We're not out there doing it.
So,
And I think, go ahead.
yeah, I actually really like Anne Rogers' questions, if I'm being honest. And I think her question does have like, how are the agencies contacted, who notifies them, at what stage of the process, so it kind of goes through that. And I think we could take these questions and maybe add number 11 and say like, what are the challenges that these agencies are facing? And I feel like it kind of is broad enough that they could like give us as much information as they feel that they have, and we're not asking super specifically if they don't have that information for us.
The only question, I mean, I agree with that, the question, only question, oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you. The only question amongst the Rogers question that I don't really understand is just how many injuries, if any, are suffered during the response, which is number 8. So I would recommend that we eliminate that question.
If I can add on to that, I actually kind of liked Commissioner Fitch's question about, if I can find it, how often is use of force used, how often are restraint devices used? Maybe adding that question is in place of number 8.
Number
Like,
4
asking
from her.
injuries. Yeah, her number 4.
I would be, rather than how often, I would be more interested in what context. Like, yeah, if somebody's, you know, on some drug that turns them into a deranged superhero, then that's probably one thing. So how often that happens isn't really up to them. What's up to them is under what circumstances do they use what technique?
So I would be interested in how often it happens as well. How often and under what circumstances is force used? Is that, yeah.
Okay, so what I would suggest, and would like to hear your feedback, if we would go and use Anne Rogers' question and maybe take a few questions from this list and add it to that and then vote on it, so that we can have these questions when the presenters come. That would resolve it.
I think we're doing fine, because no one's gonna say, oh, she can't have her questions answered, and Kathy's taking them down, so I don't know that
Is
we
she
need to
taking them
vote.
down? Okay.
Yeah, so far I have, add a number, okay, we're starting with, Anne Rogers' question.
Yeah, we're gonna use hers.
Then we're gonna add a number 11, what are the challenges that the agency faces? There's a recommendation to eliminate question number 8 from Anne Rogers' list.
And replace it with 4
Right.
from but
From the
change the
standard.
wording a little bit.
How
often
How
and
often
under
and
what
in what
circumstances?
is force used, et cetera?
Can we just recommend, just rather than saying how often, just say, is force used to subdue, or, you know, or may force be used to subdue or restrain a person, et cetera?
Well, I'd like to know how often it happens.
At this stage, though, I mean, I'm just wondering,
Well,
you're talking about just general frequency, not specific numbers.
Well, no, not statistic, but generally, is it like most of the time, half the time, almost never?
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna have 4. Any other additions?
Yeah, can I have one more? For number 7 of Ann Rogers' question, she says, who takes the lead in disposition of the issue, whether to take custody, hospitalization, leave the scene? And then maybe add in the bullet points, kind of coming off of what Commissioner Pritchett had. What options does an officer have at the scene for disposition, like besides hospitalization or custody? Like, are there other options?
Any others?
I just want to acknowledge that the situation we're talking about originates with the Reagan administration and the elimination of
Yes.
mental health care in California. And so I hope that we can hold in mind this broader context and not, rest the situation squarely on the shoulders of the police department.
Oh,
We wouldn't do
absolutely
that,
not.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not, it's a
No.
horrific situation, yeah. That's the reason I wanted to say what are the challenges, because in recognition of it's an impossible situation, we'd like to hear, exactly what are the most profound challenges that they
Everyone
face.
has their questions in?
What?
Everyone has their questions?
Yeah.
Yes,
Great.
and I have one more statement to
Okay.
make, which is that my son's surrogate grandmother runs a mental health clinic in Berkeley, and so she is in fact the person who makes a lot of these calls, and she is overwhelmingly positive about the services that are provided. Her only concern is on response time, because she says that any delay in a situation like that, a situation can change so very quickly, and that it can be very dangerous to the person and to the surrounding people. So staffing and response time is her #1 concern, not the services that are provided.
Okay. So, Kathy, you have all the
Yeah, I think
questions?
I have it all. Do you want me
Okay,
to read
so
that?
does anyone have anything else? I think this is a good start, for April 24th.
Yes, and can we also ask the presenters if they're open to a question and answer period, so that other people can ask questions if they have them?
I'm sure they will.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so if nothing further, public comment
Okay, so that's by consensus?
by consensus?
Okay.
Yes. Any public comments?
State the end.
You may speak.
You've heard me speak before. My name is Charles Clark. I reside in District 6. And I'll just say that I'm happy to see you proceed with the Lexipol substance examination, because I think that that gets to one of the 2 core missions of this group. You've heard me say that before, and I encourage those who have been on it for quite a long time now, and you have a new commissioner new to the task, I guess, Commissioner Roberts. And all I can say is that the reason I find this valuable is that you really do have to look at the policies that the police department is following, and don't just leave them on autopilot. So the Lexipol thing is not so much because they're moving out a cloud-based repository of these rules, but you're actually going through them again. Okay, now I understand that the subcommittee so far has only been looking at it from a standpoint of faithfulness of translation from one to the other. But as time goes by, it really is worth looking at these to see if they still reflect the values that Berkeley stands for. So I think I've mentioned before that you should not feel like it's make work. It really is not, because it really is one of the 2 critical things that this commission does. The second being investigating citizen complaints, and that brings me to my second comment on the subcommittee formed about the preponderance of evidence standard in your VOIs. I guess I've been puzzled how it is that the clear and convincing standard has been interpreted to be a supermajority of the commission in deciding BOI. That I understand is the mathematical manifestation of it. Is it the standard that each individual commissioner applies to the evidence? See, I guess it's a little unclear because having read the Bernstein memo, it seemed to me that it was exclusively just the supermajority standard. So I guess I'm hopeful that as you proceed with this effort, you'll actually think about what it actually means. I mean, truthfully, the area I come from is more attuned to civil cases like antitrust, where preponderance of evidence is actually the standard. And I figure if it's good enough for a multi-billion acquisition, it's probably good enough for deciding these matters as well. So I would say bring your wisdom to it, and I'd say consulting experts is good, but I think it's also a matter of just saying what is the end result of the process when you finally have the rule that you need to decide upon.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Public comment?
Thank you.
City manager?
I'm Elaine Ridley, city manager, and I just wanted to say that I'm very glad to be here this evening. I'm looking forward to coming to more PRC meetings, just being here and hopefully supporting the police department and here, of course, to support our PRC. I do want to make just a couple of announcements. In May of this year, the city will be launching its first budget presentations on all departments. The larger departments, including the police department, will be holding a budget presentation at the Budget and Finance Committee set for May 1st. It'll be a full day of presentations for our city departments. This will be their first time presenting their full budgets and talking about their challenges, accomplishments, some of the major initiatives, their revenues and expenditures, how they're funded for each division. So there'll be really good information shared with the public during those sessions. And then on May 3rd, we'll have our smaller departments our support departments will be providing their presentations as well. May 1st is a full day, May 3rd is a half day, and I welcome all of you to be there. If you have the time, you already volunteered 1 hour. So, but if you are interested in hearing the police department's budget presentation, it will be on May 1st.
And the location?
It's City Hall, and I'm not, let me provide that to you later, and should it change, given that it could be a large presence of community and staff, so you may have to hold it at a larger court.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes, please. I'm trying to manage the camera myself. So Christine Schwartz again, thank you for all your hard work. It's hard to remember to thank people and introduce myself when you're angry about something because you lose sight of what you're saying. I wanted to thank the Berkeley PD. Again, there was a particular call, and it's related to today's mental health topic. Some lady, while we were driving to the dog park off of San Pablo and Addison recently, she was having some mental breakdown, and she was moving, she was being a hazard to people on the road. She was moving furniture and leaving it in the street, first on the east side and then the west side of San Pablo. And I simply, put my hazards on, moved the furniture, but it didn't stop there. She started throwing tree stems. I didn't realize it until I saw it on my windshield. But this kind of daily occurrence happens, and I don't think the way to handle it is to just let it happen and close our eyes and just go to the next day. I think that we really need to address the issue. But I wanted to commend the Berkeley PD. Particular officers of this day was Sergeant Ross, Officer Klepp, and Officer Bold. They did an excellent job of getting there expediently and actually taking her into custody immediately, which that I would want to happen to anyone who is in danger of themselves or others. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one follow-up comment. I looked at email earlier. The training at Malcolm X was actually being conducted by Lieutenant Opie, Sergeant
I
Fonte,
recognize the Berkeley police.
Officer Kleppe, and Officer Hartley,
Yeah.
so it wasn't just the USD doing something, it was our people doing it.
I thought they were doing an excellent job. I was more trying to play duck and cover. Thank you so much. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, it's now 8:25 and the meeting of the Police Review Commission is now adjourned.